I assume most people saw this clip of this debate, and it seemed like it's a format I have never seen before, but it seemed like it was like a 5 minute debate, 10 minute debate. I only got 6.5 minutes of this debate through TikTok, and I actually reposted that on my account here on TikTok. So just check out my profile. But you want to watch it because I would play it for you, but TikTok will flag you for unoriginal content if you play any clips. I guess that's too long, right? So hopefully, if someone comes up, you actually watch the clip. But in lieu of me playing the clip for people, I did create a transcript and what have you. So yeah, I do got a transcript. So that's what's up. I'm gonna welcome people up. You can speak on it in the chat room. I'll try to monitor it more, but bear with me and give me a second to post to my social media accounts and get some of my people to pull up, see what they think about it. So don't go nowhere. I'm gonna just share those real quick. I already got them already set up. All I got to do is press post. All right, that's Facebook. Oh, by the way, Black Talk Radio Network. Follow us on Facebook. We got about 25,000 followers. Been around since 2008, the very year I believe that Facebook was created by Mark Zuckerberg. Same year as Twitter, and our platform, of course, came out then. I think it's saying something. We've been around for this year will be our 17th year anniversary. So check out the podcast. We do speak to the African American community, really the entire diaspora, but we have conversations about everything and with everybody. So if you're on Facebook, follow us at Black Talk Radio Network. Let me just shoot this out on Elon Musk's platform. But again, I was on there in 2008. I don't really like him. I heard Trump threaten to deport him, and he's on tape saying that he actually came here illegally, like somehow overstayed whatever type of visa. So let me go ahead and shut these windows. So yeah, that's interesting. And Trump actually threatened to deport him, and I am so glad this is happening. I'm not saying I'm glad Trump is president, but I'm saying I'm just glad that all of this is just playing out in real time, how government really works. Trump, that's why they don't want Trump to be in there, is because the stuff that you're supposed to keep in the back room, you know what I'm saying? The old cliche of smoke-filled back rooms that came up actually when Bernie Sanders supporters in 2016 during the DNC primary sued, who did they sue? They sued the DNC, that's right. Sued the DNC, and that's what they lawyers argued in court. This is all in record. It was in a Florida courtroom where this lawsuit was heard. And the lawyer said that the DNC, as a corporation, and I'm ad-libbing here, but this is the gist of it. The DNC is a corporation that can pick and choose whoever they want their nominee to be. And primaries and all that type of stuff don't matter. Now, I just summarized it, but anybody can go look that up, right? Since I'm talking about Democrats in the bad light, and again, welcome to all those who have joined us for this live. Let me say something good about North Carolina Democrats. I'm still a registered independent. In North Carolina, we had a choice to be registered as independents and still vote in primaries for the party. So we don't have to be a member of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the Libertarian Party to vote in their primaries. We have what's called open primary laws, something like that. But we can only vote in one primary. We can't go and vote in each and every last one of them. Okay, so that's my affiliation. But I'll say this about the Democrats in North Carolina, and particularly in my county. 2 years ago, for those who have been following the media that I produced since 2008, in 2013 I came out with New Abolitionist Radio, had a few different hosts, had the major event in Lafayette Park in 2017 in Washington, D.C., the Millions for Prisoners' Human Rights. Abolitionists came from all over the country, and we're speaking on the fact that slavery has not been abolished. Let's stop saying that. Just because, and it's the theory of the big lie. If you come up with this lie that's so sinister and so outrageous, but you repeat it enough that people will believe it. That's true. I think that was even attributed, or a quote similar to that attributed to Joseph Goebbels, the master media manipulator of Germany in World War II, Nazi Germany. I'll be trying not to get flagged, y'all. Here, so again, thanks for pulling up, though. I'm going to break down this debate. You can feel free to comment or request to speak. I'm glad that everybody is coming through and interested in this topic. So, but getting back to the Democrats, I do that sometimes. Y'all have to excuse me. I'm an elderly man. I'm not elderly. I'll be 59 this year, but just the way my mind works. But anyway, getting back to the Democrats. The Democrats passed a party resolution. This is just a state, North Carolina Democrats. I had been invited to speak on abolition and looking at North Carolina's constitution, which abolishes slavery, but then it says involuntary servitude is punishment for crime. So again, this is trickery. This is and this is important. It comes up in this debate because what's the lady name? The Queenmaker, Princella. I think that's how you pronounce it. The Queenmaker. She talks about the literacy rates and what have you. And that a lot of people is just so uneducated, and particularly women. She was saying that women were really uneducated. So I got the transcripts, and I ain't agree with a lot of things that she said. I ain't agree with everything that Candace said, but the major point was, do we have a patriarchal government in the United States? In the states, because we have state governments. And then look at your city councils, where we see a lot of women serving. But women make up the majority of the voting bloc. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm saying I kind of agree with Candace on that. Now, Candace needs to tighten up on her arguments. Let's just call them arguments, her points of view, because she used a lot of logical fallacy. Even though I agree with her point, she didn't do a good job getting that point across. And I don't know why she likes to go off into tangents like white supremacy don't exist. She tends to, that was totally off topic and what have you, but again, like she's the defender of white males. I know she married to one, and I don't have a problem with whoever marries who and who with who. But she seems to always come to the rescue of white males and defend their honor and say that everybody's calling them white supremacists and racists and what have you. And it's just like it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you know what you know. Let's just leave it at that. Now, I do think that Princella, I think that's how you pronounce her name, the Queenmaker, I think she won the debate. Technically, she won the debate. Like, now think about it in terms of you're in a debate club and you're being not graded on how persuasive you are, because you could use, in public speaking, you could use body language, you could use tonal projections. Some people, that's why some people are very good salesmen or salespersons, is they talk a good game. They smooth with their articulation of what they trying to sell you. Okay, but again, if you getting back to Candace, if you don't present it in a logical way, then the bottom just falls out. But I think technically, the Queenmaker relied less on logical fallacies, whereas Candace Owens used a lot of logical fallacies. And that's something I'm really going to get into on a regular basis, is finding these type of debates, especially, geopolitics and what have you. I guess I could expand it because politics really involves everything. But anyway, I'm gonna start analyzing these debates like I did on the last podcast and, break it down by logical fallacies. So I actually, on Black Talk Media Projects page, that's our nonprofit, in case you didn't know, right now our main home is on Facebook if you want to learn about what we do and what the vision is for it. I'm not going to go into an infomercial right now, but that's where you can find Black Talk Media Project. And I posted a graphic about logical fallacies. And then in the description, I listed the definition of a logical fallacy. It's called the Queenmaker, which is I don't really like that kind of style when somebody try to put you on the spot and ask you to define the word, especially early on, like, can you even define the word that you're using? I mean, a lot of people do misuse words, and some people even make up new definitions for words. And over the years, my podcast listeners, y'all know I've complained about that because that causes confusion and what have you. But I think the Queenmaker didn't get her facts right, and so that I'm gonna break it down by logical fallacies, and you can find those definitions and all the different terms for logical fallacies. Go to facebook.com/Black Talk Media Project. right? And pinned at the top of the page is also a donate button. We are a nonprofit media organization. Please hit that, or however these people allow you to contribute, you know, to the content creators that you appreciate. So like I said, I do have a transcript, and I don't know if I want to go through the transcript for you, or do I just want to go through the debate analysis? Because I know everybody hasn't seen this clip, and again, I don't want to play it because I don't want to get flagged by TikTok for unoriginal content. It's a 6.5 minute clip, and before I get started, I want to say thank you to both of those ladies. All right, because they conducted themselves like ladies. They didn't try to talk over each other. They didn't cut each other off. They let each other express themselves, you know, in an orderly fashion. I give them both an A+ on their behavior. Even though, again, I thought the Queenmaker low-key was trying to throw some shots and what have you. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, you can share them in the chat. Do I got this multi-guest thing turned on? You'll be able to come up. I'm not sure. Okay. Can I minimize this? No, I just have to exit. So let me just move this down here. All right, so I think I'm gonna go through the transcripts, all right, because it's not that long. So I don't think I caught the entire clip because it seemed that Candace Owens might have said before the people started recording that part of the debate, like she thinks that we live in a matriarchal society, and I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't even go that far to say that. To be honest with you, I would say that it's pretty much equal. I think power is distributed when we're just strictly limited to the people activity area of politics. It's pretty much equal. And people be like, well, we got all of, because this is what the Queenmaker was doing. We got all these men, and it's only so many women, and that by itself is an oversimplification, and it's a logical fallacy when you consider that women make up the largest percentage of the voting bloc. So the facts really do undercut what she was saying. All right, it just really do, and I'm gonna share some of those facts. But if you think this is something someone else should hear and weigh in on, but I want to thank those women for even having the debate, because it allows the rest of us, you know, to come along and debate. So yeah, like the live, share the live, y'all, so that more people can see this and be exposed to this information. So let's go ahead and start. So Candace Owens says, live in a matriarchy, right? Can you give me the definition of patriarchy? Oh man, I think I switched it. So that was Priscilla, the Queenmaker, that asked that question. And so then Candace said, yes, the live in a matriarchy. Okay, yes, the denotative, yeah, this is the Queenmaker. She's defining patriarchy, all right. She says, yes, I can define it. The denotative definition of patriarchy is father rule, in quotations, that's maybe the Latin or whatever, where positions of government are held majorly by men. I think she misspoke, and women are largely excluded. So you have 125 members of the House of Representatives are females. That's only about 25%. Only about 28% of the Senate is female, and overall just 3.3% of Congress members historically have ever been women. So by denotative definition, we literally live in a patriarchy. So, but it's nuances to stuff. But again, here's where a logical fallacy come in. I'm gonna keep reading, but just right off the top is we're talking about today. We're talking about politics today. We're not talking about the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, we're talking about 2025. The last major election was 2024. But my data is on the 2020. I don't have a 2024 election. But so we ain't talking about back before women's suffrage. So when you say historically, you bringing something into the debate that has nothing to do with, that's like trying to appeal to emotions and what have you. The question is, do we have a patriarchy? And I guess somebody was saying we had a matriarchy, and I don't agree with either one of those. All right. But she goes on. So I think that was pretty much fact. Okay. Then Candace says, well, the patriarchy is the ideal that our system in America is being run by men, and that women are existing under a system that immediately disadvantages them because men are behind it. And I disagree with that pointedly. I think actually we're living in a society where people are being very much influenced socially and politically by women. And I detected no lies. I really didn't. You know, women are a major influence. And I know they talk about the breakup of the families and the family structures. Modern day slavery has something to do with that. And we were just talking about the black community. But, you know, there are a lot of fatherlessness in the white communities as well. Hey, hell, they exist in all communities. Right? So who's raising the children? So if the mother, we're going to assume she's a woman because we live in 2025 where people get confused about these things. I'll leave it at that. And so who has the most influence over the children, if not the mother? Even if the father's there. And in the world that they seem to be trying to say Candace prefers is a work-at-home mom or whatever, that's fine and well, Candace, if you can meet somebody you're compatible with that is wealthy and what have you, and you appear to find one, and you are working from home and you are generating income for yourself. You're not just relying on this wealth, but you're doing it from home. You could do podcasting from home where you have, I don't know how, she has an infant child and what have you, but I think she has some stepchildren. But that's going to another debate she had with Piers Morgan. But anyway, she says the patriarchy is the ideal that our system in America is being run by men and that women are existing. Yeah, she says she disagrees. I already covered that. I think, and she's not wrong. Then Princella, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. That's, I guess that's her stage name. The Queenmaker, Princella, the Queenmaker. And some of the people that she criticizes in this debate about being low information people, uneducated people with only a 6th grade education, and particularly women. These are her words, not mine. And so she basically saying they too dumb to vote. That's why they vote against their own interests. But you could say that about anybody who's voting Republican or voting Democrat. If we break it down issue by issue, that could be said about all people who vote in a partisan fashion, you know, party line vote, as they say. So as far as I can see, and then it's more nuanced than that. Yeah, I don't rock with this dude on that, or I don't rock with her on that, but she does support this or he does support that, like abolishing slavery in the state, or doing whatever is a popular initiative, providing tuition-free college or something like that. Okay, I'm gonna vote on which one issue is more important, and I may think the rest of the person's platform is trash. But it come down to stuff like that sometimes. But everybody at the end of the day is voting against their own interests in this system that's still practicing slavery. And there are different forms of slavery. You don't have to just be in the prison to be a slave. They had slaves out there picking up farm vegetables and stuff in them fields. They call them undocumented, or a more pejorative term, call them illegals and what have you. And so now they are trying to round these people up and then not just put them immediately on a bus and send them across the way. No, the GO group and many of these private prison operators who are modern day private slavers, okay, might as well say, and all their stockholders. Oh man, the GO group, shout out to one of my old hosts who sent me some information about the GO group purchasing a $65 million facility, right, to house these immigrants and what have you. And so I, as an abolitionist, recognize this as a form of slavery and human trafficking, because I don't see any of the executives of these corporations that have hired them. And we got big agriculture here, right? In addition to farmers, independent farmers, but big agriculture using them too, I'm sure. I ain't seen none of these people get frog marched in handcuffs and taken anywhere to be prosecuted for what they portray as a crime, but it really isn't criminal. It's a civil violation. So now it's taking me back to some of the broadcasts and interviews I did with people, particularly attorneys, Angela Chin, about they haven't been convicted of crimes. These are civil infractions. So therefore, and I think they filed a lawsuit, them being enslaved under the 13th Amendment was outside of the bounds. You had to be convicted of a crime to be a slave today in the United States per the 13th Amendment, and they are not. So these are people with civil infractions who are being housed and put to work. Cause there was a lawsuit suing them. That was part of the lawsuit, paying them $1 a day. They basically running the facility, keeping the grounds and all of that, getting paid $1 a day. And these slavers is getting $1 billion contracts. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this Congress or this government has set aside $460 billion to lock up people. And of course, we know they privatizing everything. So again, how is this not slavery and human trafficking? But I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry. All right. So just that part of it. Yeah. So she says, who's making the laws? And she gave you the breakdown on Congress, the 28%, and I'll fact check some of that later. But anyway, she then says, I think what this gets to, which is actually an important part of the conversation, is that people always think that where there is disparity, there's somehow inequality. No, Candace, but it's a dang on good sign, and usually where there's smoke and fire. See, she loses me when she get off into who did she used to work for when she used to work for the Daily Wire and those Turning Point USA. Yeah, you need to leave them talking points behind. But anyway, she says that I reject that entirely. I think it's just a difference in what we're interested in. We're biologically wired to be interested in different careers. Just because if we looked at the fashion industry and saw it dominated by women, that doesn't mean it's a matriarchy or that men are oppressed in it. Those numbers show we're just different. I actually think women have a lot more political power than men. And women do have more political power than men. But you know what? That whole stuff you just said is a logical fallacy, and it don't hold up to scrutiny, Candace. And this is what I mean. I agree with the overall point that you're trying to make about questioning whether we can rightly still call this system a patriarchy, but you lose me when you start acting like inequality don't exist, particularly racism and white supremacy. So let me see, it goes on. She says, take the Me Too movement. Again, another logical fallacy. Stay on topic, ladies. We're talking about political power. We're talking about the government. We're talking about the people that make decisions to whether or not to send another genocidal state weapons and ammunitions to continue with G-side and starving people and what have you. And then, oh man, these people are the cause of so much suffering, and it don't have to be that way. But the Me Too movement was not a political movement, and it was like a flash in the pan, like a fad. It was good that they spoke out on what everybody knew since the founding of Hollywood. We all know that stuff was going on, and we just assume everybody consented to it, that was the price you had to pay in order to be a star. But I guess it started with those, and again, there's no excuse for that, but the Me Too movement really didn't generate much political power. We didn't see any new laws or anything like that to make it easier for women, or anyone for that matter. Men get sexually assaulted too, by women and other men. And making it easier for victims of that type of stuff, that kind of workplace harassment, and make it easier for them to sue. But it's actually quite difficult, man, to bring these type of lawsuits and what have you. So she goes on with some other ridiculous stuff about if a bunch of men, take the Me Too movement, a bunch of women complained about men, screamed about the patriarchy, and the media celebrated. So, just to reduce sexual assault to some women just complaining and screaming, that's not cool. And all the media did not celebrate it. Again, media has factions. It's basically entertainment, and it feeds on whatever their target audience is. Some media celebrated it. Some other media was critical of these claims and what have you. All right. But she goes on to say if a bunch of men did that about women, the media would call them misogynists or white supremacists. So again, her focus is on white males. She married one, so I'm not surprised there. But I'm trying to keep race out of this. This is just about gender and political power. She says women are allowed to be more vocal than men generally. See, these are anecdotal evidence that she really can't quantify, right? She just really, hey, what's up, Doshan? Come on up if you choose to weigh in. I don't know if again you, like others, got to see that clip between Candace Owens and Princella, the Queenmaker. Princella, the Queenmaker. But I thought it was interesting, very interesting. And I was glad to see it was cordial though. All right. So anyway, getting back to this transcript here. The Queenmaker says, let me speak to that. Government and media are two different things under the denotative definition of patriarchy. Based on who holds power in government, we live in a patriarchy. So again, getting back to, this is the point. Do we live under a patriarchy government? And I would have to say we don't. But Princella is saying that we still do, just based off of males occupying certain positions. So, but she's right to point out that when she does it herself, let's stop jumping around. You know, this industry, the fashion industry is separate from the media industry. The media industry is separate from the government industry. So you can't jump all over the place if we're asking the question, is the system patriarchal? All right. And that's why a number of logical fallacies come up. So she says, let me speak to that. Government and media are two different things. All right. Now, when it comes to capitalism, marketing, and consumer control, that's a different conversation. Why are we introducing all this other stuff into it? Right. But when it comes to who's making the laws, I don't think women are the ones voting to take away their reproductive rights. And then technically, nobody's voting to take away anyone's reproductive rights, even though the state of California took away the reproductive rights of those women, mainly poor, mainly Hispanic, and black, where they were sterilized, tubes tied. Don't just believe me. Go look it up. Wow. And guess who was the Attorney General at the time? Yes, Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris. Yeah. So some people's, that's in my mind, is taking away your right to reproduce. When you sterilize people, what happened to a lot of people, well, hell, here in the state of North Carolina, they didn't stop sterilizing people until the 1980s. That's when that eugenics program shut down. I was in high school, maybe a sophomore in high school when it shut down, and I still remember reading about it. I was like, dang, this was going on. Look it up. There's been media put out there and people who have spoken on that. That's taking away your reproductive rights. Outlawing, passing laws to restrict abortions, that's technically not taking away your reproductive rights. Okay? Is it infringing on your rights? I would say so. But technically, nobody's voted. These women are not voting to have their reproductive rights. The ones who are anti-abortion are for reproducing. Especially the white ones. They always telling these white women to reproduce, have more children because of our dwindling numbers, and it might have something to do with how you keep having these endless wars. And these white boys get gung-ho about it, and they be infantry, want to be Rambo and get messed up over there. So, where was I? I'm jumping ahead when it comes to capitalism. But when it comes to who's making the laws, I don't think women are the ones taking their reproductive rights or forcing rape and incest victims to give birth. Women in government wouldn't largely vote against their own interests. That's the result of male-dominated rule, patriarchy. Candace says, I love that point. Are women allowed to vote? Princella, of course they are. Candace, so who's voting this patriarchy in? And that's a valid question. Just out of curiosity, she says. That's a valid question. See, this is where we get into the nuances. And just cause you see, let me use my own people for an example. Y'all have heard of the term, just cause they look like me don't mean they for me, or all skin folk ain't kinfolk. All black faces in high places does not represent any kind of progress. And in fact, we've had lost rights, everybody, civil rights, under this government and the Democratic Party, where most of these people were, quite a few of them, were in leadership positions or in a position to debate and argue. So this system, man. So, but you can't just go off of what you see. Right? It's people behind the people. So women are allowed to vote. They make up, and this is a fact, the largest voting bloc. And they're the ones that voted all these males in. And voting the females in. Women, we're not going to divide anyone by race. Women are the deciding voting bloc in the United States. They turn out more than anybody else. The rest of us could just stay home because it always comes down to how they vote. Be interesting to do some research on that. Somebody do the quick research. We got these tools and post it in the chat. Let's see if anybody has any questions popped up in the chat. Again, remember, you can come up, but I'm gonna work my way through this transcript. Let me move some stuff around so I don't get flagged for inactivity or whatever. All right, so where are we? I totally agree with you. So who's voting this patriarchy in? Just out of curiosity, that was Candace. So the Queenmaker comes back. I totally agree, and you want to know why? Because this is when she really started denigrating women. I totally agree, and you want to know why? Because there are so many women who think like you, and I would also look at that as a personal attack. But I think that's about the only time she did that. But points off for the personal attack. That's part of logical fallacies and what have you. It's actually a name for it. But anyway, she says, you submit to the ideal of men ruling everything. Your ideology is spread across a lot of women who also falsely believe that they should vote against their own interests just to complain about it later. You said earlier that women are happier working at home. I think everybody be happier working at home. I know I've been happier working from home for the past 17 years, not punching the clock and what have you. If I had to punch a clock, it was just temporary to get some extra money. Then I'm out the door, but I haven't had to punch a clock. Yeah, so I think it's not even a gender thing. So again, I must have caught the last 6.5 minutes of this debate. I'm gonna try to find a full debate, but I think this is enough to get the gist of what they were talking about. I already know the main question was, do we live in a patriarchy or under a patriarchal government? So your ideology is spread across a lot of women who falsely believe they should vote against their own interests just to complain about it later. You said women are happier working at home, but you don't think it's human nature to want what you don't have. I don't know what they're referring to there. In the 1950s, which you always reference, it wasn't even illegal to beat your wife until 1994. That's a logical fallacy, but I'll put a pin in that and I'm gonna tell you why later. Because when we consume these debates, or if we're engaged in debates, as I said in my last podcast, man, we would do well to educate ourselves and training our children. This kind of education should really start in high school, and I would say with freshmen, and then have a course every year building on top of the next. And yeah, but being able to recognize debate tactics, logical fallacies will help you not only win the argument, but it'll help you from being manipulated by words. Okay, so she said we're dealing with people. So we're in the 1950s, which you always reference, it wasn't even illegal to beat your wife until 1994. So we're dealing with people wanting something, getting it, then not being happy and swinging back again. So when women vote for these things, it's because they had that same mentality as you. Candace Owens, so you're acknowledging women have the freedom to vote. She says yes. And you're saying that even in that freedom, they're still voting men in because they're victims. I mean, that is factual. Again, as I said, who's deciding all these elections? Everybody else could stay home. But she says because they're victims. So that's what's got in their vote. So she says, no, I don't believe in victimhood. I believe in a lack of education and knowledge. Well, you know what? That is victimhood. And a lot of us been victims of the U.S. education system. I was a victim of it. And I'm going to tell you, the most offensive thing I learned was that they didn't abolish slavery. They told me a lie. I was, 2013 is when I learned that the 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery, because I was just doing research on my own. I'll get things in my head and I'll be like, oh, go look that up. For whatever reason. And that's when I discovered that big old glaring loophole. Now the black codes make sense. Now the prison labor population growing makes sense. Now how it's racially broken down and who you're targeting and imprisoning makes sense. You haven't abolished slavery. Now we got slavery for all, but we still know who the main target is. So I would say that if you don't get an education and real knowledge in school, that you didn't went to all these years, compensatory education, And you didn't, and no, man, I would say we are victim of this system. That's how this system is by design, is what I'm trying to say. And so I really don't rock with her on some of these things she's saying. She said one of the things you said was maybe more men are just running for office, but that's not necessarily it. The average reading comprehension level in the U.S. is 6th grade. We're not dealing with an educated public. She's factually incorrect and correct at the same time. She's wrong on the level of education. All right, but she is technically correct. We are dealing with the uneducated. But you know what, though? Even the so-called most educated people do things that just don't make sense until you view it, which she'll bring up later, view it through the prism of classism and what tax bracket they find themselves in, depending on the character, the content of their character. So let me go on. Lack of education is why we see what we see. We see what the mainstream media wants us to see, and the social media platforms via algorithms and censorship want us to see. If we educated women better, because a nation can rise no higher than its woman. There's a nice saying from a poem. I think a famous black lady might have said that back in the day. I just can't remember right now. But that's not a logical statement. Can rise no higher than its woman. I mean, the United States, because it's been run by a bunch of vicious white males who are homicidal, genocidal, in terms of creating an empire, I say they've risen pretty high. And that's sort of like a backhanded compliment. And they didn't need women to do that. But we're not going to absolve white women of their role in that treacherous history. If we educated women better, then things would change. But if she's reading at a 6th grade level and having a lot of kids, because the poorest people pop out the most kids, those people are voting, and they vote against their interests, chasing some utopian society that doesn't exist. I don't know who she was taking a shot at, or because Candace is not a socialist. And I don't think anybody associates the word utopian with capitalism. So I don't know what she is referring to, what system. But again, though, this is also insulting. This is insulting. She has very low opinion of people in the ghettos and the trailer parks and the reservations, I guess. And I don't know what she means by they're chasing a utopian society that doesn't exist. What group of voters is she referring to? Again, if you have any opinions on this, definitely request to come up. I'll check the board from time to time. Or type what your opinion in the chat. So again, I'm saying technically the Queenmaker won the debate. If I'm grading on message, views and numbers, even if they're a little off, somewhere a lot off, but trying to use a fact-based argument and not so much using so many logical fallacies. Candace stuff was riddled with them. And I know I've heard her say, because I consume some of her podcasts, if it's a topic that interests me, that she's reading and still learning, and said herself she's still discovering stuff or educating herself. She's still young, you know what I'm saying? But I would be consumed about the stuff she's been consuming. Some of the books she mentioned, I'm not even going to get into. I'm like, nah, need to fact check that. But yeah. So anyway, so that's why you think Kamala lost, Candace retorts. This ain't even about Kamala. But how can Princella say it's not about Kamala if we're talking about voting and voting power and who controls this system or has the most influence in this system? Is it a patriarchy? Is it a matriarchy? And who's choosing who? And she's already conceding, the Queenmaker is conceding that these women hold the reins of power with their votes as much as those who trust electoral politics, because I've seen elections or two stolen in my 58 years. We're not even gonna go 58, we'll say 40 years. I think I first voted when I was 18, but anyway, moving on. You brought up women. Yeah, Priscilla retorts. Yeah, but we had a male running and a female running, and Trump increased. No, this is Candace speaking. And Trump increased the amount of women voting for him. So I'm asking, do you think that happened because women became less educated during that time? So again, the Queenmaker insults the intelligence of these people. They've always been less educated. Did you know UNESCO says 2/3 is a logical fallacy coming up? And I'm gonna point these out later. Did you know UNESCO says 2/3 of the 7.7 million illiterate adults in the world are women illiterate? Okay, that's a logical fallacy, and I'm gonna tell you later why. But if they estimate that only 7.7 million adults are illiterate, I would say that's not a very big percentage, and the majority of people are not illiterate. We're quoting UNESCO, 7.7 million ain't nothing. We got that in some states, but she's using a global statistics that's supposed to be about U.S. system of government and voting and all that. You can't bring global statistics into it to try to support your argument. So this is, that's a logical fallacy. She says, we black folks aren't the dominant group voting people into power, and she correct. So now you got to factor in white supremacy and feminism. Now you have to think about the mindset of people with economic success, because class matters too. I'm sorry, but a lot of people vote based on their feelings, not policy. So she all over the place right there is what I'm saying. She all over the place. So I'm gonna see if I can play the clip and y'all should be able to hear it. Again, you're welcome to join in. And then I will get into, hope this thing don't start up.
If black kids are angry.
Yeah, let's stop there. Let's go to my profile. And if you heard it, this is an opportunity for you to go ahead and take a restroom break, as they say, while this clip play. In case you haven't heard it, because then I'm going to come back with the actual debate analysis. What I've been reading to you over the past however long I was on was just the transcript. And of course, I was interjecting my thoughts into it, and nobody else requested to come up. So yeah, let me find that debate, because I know that I reshared it. Okay, there you go, repost. I'll be looking in the wrong place. Here it go. Right here. So let me chill out on that background music. Go ahead and end that. Let this clip play. Then maybe some who haven't heard it might want to chime in at that point. So let me get TikTok back up. See if I can minimize this a little bit. Appreciate y'all patience with me. Minimize some of this other stuff. All right, let's go.
Live in a matriarchy.
Right.
Can you give me the definition of patriarchy?
Yes, well, the patriarchy is the idea that the system, our system in America, is being run by men, and that women are having to exist under a system that immediately disadvantages them because men are behind it. And I disagree with that politically. I think actually we're living in a society where people are being very much influenced socially and politically by women.
Okay, so the denotative definition of patriarchy is father rule, and where positions of government are held majorly by men, where women are largely excluded. So 125 House of Representatives are female, and that's only about 25%. And only about 28% make up Senate, and 3.3% of Congress up until this date have ever been women. So by denotative definition, we literally live in a patriarchy.
Yes, so I disagree with that. So I think what this gets to, which is actually an important part of the conversation, is that people always think that where there is disparity, there's somehow inequality, and I actually reject that entirely. I think it's just a difference in what we're interested in. I think we're biologically wired, we're interested in different careers, and just because if we looked in the fashion industry and said, oh, well, it's being dominated by women, it wouldn't mean that, okay, well, that means that the fashion industry is a matriarchy and men have no sense. It just means have no ability to communicate how they feel in the fashion industry. I literally think that those numbers show that we're just biologically different. So I actually think politically, women have shown that they have a lot more power than men have. And I'm talking about just in terms of political movements. The most recent I can think of is the Me Too movement, right? If a bunch of women get together and complain about a man and refer to the patriarchy and scream, generally speaking, let me know if you agree, the media will celebrate that. If a bunch of men got together and were shrieking and speaking about women, generally speaking, the media would call them all white supremacists and say that we had a misogyny problem and that things were really wrong in society. Women are allowed to be more vocal in general about problems than men are.
Well, let me speak to that. When we're talking about government and media, these are two different things. So, under the denotative definition of a patriarchy, by the percentages that are occupied in the government, which is majority male, defines us as a patriarchy. Now, when it comes to for capitalism, for marketing purposes and control, for capital and revenue, that is a totally different conversation. But who's making the laws? I don't think that women are the ones voting to have their reproductive rights taken away, where you have rape, incest, and all of these things excluded to force women to be able to I don't think women in government would largely vote against their own interests because it's majority male, patriarchy.
I think, love that point. Are women allowed to vote?
Oh, of course they are.
Who's voting that patriarchy in then, out of curiosity?
No, I totally agree. And you want to know why? Because there are so many women who think like you. You submit to the idea of men ruling everything. And your ideology is spread across a lot of women who also falsely believe to vote against their own interests just to complain about it in the end. You know, earlier you said that, women would be much more happier working at home. But don't you agree that it's human nature to want things that you don't have? So during the 1950s, which is something that you constantly bring up, it wasn't until 1994 that it was legally illegal to beat your wife. And so what we're dealing with is people wanting something, and then when they get it, they're not happy with it, and then they have to revoke that idea for something else. And so what you're saying is that women vote for these things because they have the same mentality as you.
Okay. So you're acknowledging that women have the freedom to vote.
Yes.
And you're saying that women are still existing mentally, even with the freedom to vote.
Correct.
They are voting men in because we are still victims of...
No, I don't believe in victimhood. I believe in lack of education and lack of knowledge, because one of the things that you also say...
Do you think that it could just be that more men are running for positions of office?
No, not necessarily, because remember, the United States, the average reading comprehension of people in the United States is 6th grade. So we're not dealing with educated people. Lack of education is the cause for what we see in the world. And if we educate the women better, because a nation can rise no higher than its woman, and if she reading and comprehending at a 6th grade level and popping out a lot of kids, because the brokest people in the world pop out the most kids. So if we have those people voting, of course they're going to vote against their interests because they're voting for some utopian society that will never exist.
Okay, so that's why you think Kamala lost.
This ain't even about Kamala.
But you're talking about women. But we had an opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a male running and we had a female running. And we actually showed that Trump increased the amount of women who voted for him, right? So I'm asking you, do you believe that the reason that happened was because women became less educated during that time?
They've always been less educated. Did you know that UNESCO says that that 2/3 of the 7.7 million illiterate adults is women? Illiterate. And we have 6th grade educated people voting. And guess who? Guess the dominant population is white women. And so guess what? Now you have to add a race element into that, which you already know exists. Because we, as black folks, we ain't the dominant people voting people in. Okay, so now when we have to go into white supremacy and feminism, now you have to look at the mind of the people who actually have economic success and what they're voting for, because classism actually matters as well. So I'm sorry, but a lot of people vote based on their feelings and not based on policy.
Pause, guys.
Yes.
Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority.
Thank you.
Don't live in a matriarchy.
Right.
Can you give me the definition of patriarchy?
Okay, I'm back. Yeah. So I'm gonna go into some debate analysis, but she was being real anti-black there, because she did say black women, and then talking about the poorest people pop out the most children. And I haven't looked at the data recently, but we got these research tools in the palm of our hand, and I want to break down. Let me go ahead and get there. Let me just Andrew, are you there?
I'm here letting you know what you need, and I'm happy to help. If there's anything else you want to work on or discuss, just let me know.
Yeah, give me the percentages and racial breakdown for those who are on food assistance or SNAP, any kind of family benefits. And we're talking single mother households, I assume, even though she didn't mention any. What's her name? The Queenmaker, she didn't mention any. But give me a racial give me the racial breakdown of the birth rate of poor people, again, broken down by race. You understand what I just said? I know I said a lot. So he's looking it up right now for us. We had these tools in the palm of our hands, yet we don't use them. And then we are very susceptible to logical fallacies when we're watching the news, or we go to a town hall and we listen to people debate, or go to these campaign events, and if we don't know what logical fallacies are, we can be led down a hole that we don't want to go into no holes. He's still looking up the data.
In the U.S. for 2024, the racial breakdown is roughly white non-Hispanic 36.1%, Black or African American non-Hispanic 22.7%, Hispanic 29.1%, Asian or Pacific Islander 5%, other races 7.1%. I'll look up the birth rate data for low-income households by race next.
All right, go ahead and do that. Because I just hate when people do engage in racial politics, especially anti-black. And as a black woman, she shouldn't have let that come out of her mouth. So if you have any thoughts, again, y'all can share them with us in the chat while Andrew looks that up for us. Excuse me, Andre. That's why he didn't answer. I forgot I named him Andre. And people should get
it looks
in.
Like the specific data on birth rates broken down by both race and income level for 2024 is a bit tricky to find all in one place. However, I can share some general trends. Overall birth rates by race, Hispanic and Asian communities have seen a recent increase in birth rates. Non-Hispanic, white, and black communities have relatively stable or slightly lower birth rates compared to previous years. Income and birth rates, in general, lower income households tend to have higher birth rates. This trend is often linked to differences in access to family planning resources, education, and healthcare. I'll keep an eye out for more detailed statistics, and if you have any other questions or need further breakdowns, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just didn't think there was any need for her to trash black people like that. She just didn't need to do it to make the point of whether or not we live in a patriarchy. So how you gonna be pro-woman and saying anti-woman type stuff, call them dumb and all those kind of names, or insinuated? I ain't gonna say she flat out said these people are dumb, but she definitely implied it. So let's get into the debate analysis. Let's go ahead and fact check and do a logical fallacy breakdown for Candace Owens. All right, her claim number one: disparity does not mean inequality. Men and women are just interested in different things due to biology. So that's an oversimplification. While biology may play a role, research shows that socialization, economic opportunity, and systemic barriers heavily influence career and political decisions. So it's a fallacy. That term would be false cause, oversimplification. Because again, I'm gonna start educating my audience on logical fallacies and the different terms associated with the concept. Claim number two: if women dominate fashion, does that make it a matriarchy? So again, Candace need to brush up on her debate skills, because that's a definite logical fallacy when you look at the facts. Women are highly visible in fashion as models and consumers, but executive leadership remains largely male. And she mentioned the Me Too movement. So yeah, that's the fallacy. Is a false equivalence, comparing cultural representation in a private industry to structural political power. Again, the question is, do we live under a patriarchal government? Her claim number three: women have more power than men. Take the Me Too movement. Fact checking: Me Too had cultural impact, but structural power, laws, policies, institutions remain male dominated. So that was a fallacy using anecdotal evidence and a hasty generalization. Now, let's fact check the Queenmaker. Princella, I think that's how you pronounce her name. This is her stage name, I would assume. Claim number one: 125 House members are women. That's 25%. 28% of the Senate are women. And only 3.3% of all Congress members ever have been women. So when we fact check that, that's mostly accurate. As of 2024, 28.5% of the House and 25% of the Senate are women. Well, Depends on who you consider women, but they're still in a majority. Historically, 3.2% of all Congress members have been women, but we're talking about a 200-year history. Come on. So she didn't really engage in any fallacies there, but she was mostly accurate. But introducing the historic, no, we talking about today. We ain't talking about 1875. So claim number 2, until 1994, it was not illegal to beat your wife. Fact checking that, misleading, domestic violence was illegal in many states prior to 1994. The Violence Against Women Act that was during Clinton administration, I remember that. You know, that's the same year he came up with that. Well, Joe Biden came up with the mass incarceration bill, continuation of slavery. But Bill Clinton was the president that signed it into law. I think Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House at the time. So it was a bipartisan effort to increase their use of slave catching and setting up these prison plantations. So yeah, I remember that. So the fallacy is that's an oversimplification, because there were state laws against it. You still get charged with a crime, even if it was not even a gender-based charge, and just simple assault, attempted murder, or murder. But the Violence Against Women Act, I think Joe Biden came up with that one too, and it just increased penalties. But these laws do nothing to stop any type of crimes and what have you. They really don't. Not saying they shouldn't exist, but they don't. Just like the police and slave catchers don't stop crime. They respond to it after it happens. The courts deal with it after it happens. None of the laws actually stop anything. Let me see. Claim number 3 from the Queenmaker. The average reading comprehension level in the U.S. is 6th grade. Let's fact check that. That's a slight exaggeration. The national average is between 7th and 8th grade, though many official materials, meaning government materials, are written at a 6th grade level. So there was no fallacy, you know, she just slightly exaggerated. But that's lower than what I thought. I used to think it was a 12th grade. You could at least read at a 12th grade level. I know what I said. I said, if you read at a 12th grade level, you should be able to read the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and comprehend that slavery was never abolished in this country. And we need to stop buying into that bull and promoting that bull, because it's bull. So again, if you want to come up, disagree with anything that I'm saying, I don't see how you could disagree with the facts, and I'm definitely bringing facts. And I'm being objective. I'm not taking sides, but I do agree with Candace. She's doing a terrible job at making a point that it's questionable whether or not we live on a patriarchy society. Definitely one of white supremacy, but is it really just white men that's doing this to us? Or to the whole world, I should say? Free Palestine, free Congo, free the planet. So she made another claim about UNESCO, which I took issue with her injecting global literacy rates when we're talking about the United States. And even more narrow, we're talking about those who are eligible to vote. Okay? And those who do vote, because you're saying these people are voting against their own interests, right? So it's true globally. She said that 2/3 of the 7.7 million illiterate adults are women. That's true globally. However, this is irrelevant to a discussion focused on the U.S. voter base. That fallacy has a name. It's called a red herring and misapplied statistic. So claim 5, and that's like trying to appeal to emotions. Claim 5, the poorest people pop out the most kids. It's crude, but supported. Fertility rates are higher among low-income groups, often due to limited access to education and reproductive health care. The fallacy is it's loaded language. And I already expressed myself on it because she was singling out black women. Claim 6, white women dominate the voting population. That's accurate. Like I stated, I agree with that. Everybody else can just stay at home because even with us turning out to vote, white women are the largest demographic that turns out, and they decide the elections. Accurate. White women consistently turn out in high numbers and represent a large share of the electorate. So she didn't use any fallacies there. That's a fact. Now let's talk about the U.S. literacy rates by gender. Not injecting any race into this, but she brought up globally because I think it's if we look at just the U.S. literacy rates, then we stay on topic, and then we can accurately diagnose what the problem is in the United States. All right. So again, the main question is, do we have a patriarchal government in the USA? Talking about the Candace Owens versus Princella, the Queenmaker debate, and this is a BTR News breakdown. So the literacy rates, overall adult literacy rates in the United States, 79% of US adults are proficient in basic literacy. Functional literacy, 21% of US adults, about 43 million people, read below a 6th grade level. So that's a minority. It's almost a third. It's too high still, but we understand how poverty and all the intersectionality of, again, all of this under politics, and how resources is doled out to what communities and who have access to what, and who's taught what. So at least they are functioning, literates. The average reading level between 7th and 8th grade is per the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES. Now, gender comparison, right? Because she said, I think she conceded that women are doing the voting. And we already established it's mostly white women. So now, but her whole argument is, these are women that's voting these men in, but they are dumb and they just think like you and think men should be in control of everything. And they're mainly illiterate. That's the crust of her argument. Her argument is about to be destroyed, and Candace just didn't bring it, right? So when we do a gender comparison breakdown, no major gap in literacy exists between men and women. Women slightly outperform men in reading comprehension and language skills. Women are more likely to complete higher education, correlating with higher literacy. Conclusion: literacy rates in the U.S. do not support claims of female intellectual disadvantage. The gender gap in basic reading ability is statistically negligible, meaning non-existent. So that just blew her whole argument out the water. Her evidence to say that this is a patriarchal system and that Candace is wrong just been blown out the water. Because she said they just dumb and just vote against their own interests. Again, I'm of the belief we all vote against our own interests. Long as we trap between choosing a Republican and a Democrat, we all voting against our interests in multiple ways when it comes to policy and governance, right? Because they bipartisanly practice slavery and fascism and just everything evil in this world. Usually the United States is behind it. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Fact check me on it, right? So let's talk about the U.S. voter participation and education breakdown. Let's dig even deeper. Voter turnout among eligible citizens. Presidential elections in 2020, 66.8% of eligible U.S. citizens voted. So that's a majority of people that's eligible to vote, but that's not counting those who have been relegated to second-class citizenship because they was a prison slave and they got felonies, and whether those felonies came about justly or unjustly, but they so-called pay their debt to society, but let's continue to punish them and take their rights away, make things difficult for them so they can end up back on the plantation and we can make some money off their body. Tell me that ain't slavery. Midterm elections in 2022, turnout dropped to 52%. In low turnout years, the figure may fall below 40%. Let's do an education breakdown of voters. This is data from the 2020 general election, because I don't have it for 2024, but remember, the Queenmaker was going all the way back to the 1950s. So education breakdown of voters in the 2020 general election. We're going to talk about the education level and then their turnout percentage, which means they voted. Voters with less than a high school education, 35%. High school diploma only, 55%, over half. Some college or associate degree, 65%. I fall in that 65%. Bachelor degrees or higher, 80%. Those people, the most educated people on paper, they got these papers from these universities or whatever, they said they experts in this, that, and the other, turn out to vote the most. So again, her argument, the Queenmaker's argument, falls apart. These women aren't dumb that's turning out to vote. You're not considering that their interests may be different than yours and you want to attribute it to some kind of male oppression, or I don't know, but it's not standing up to scrutiny. Voter turnout correlates strongly with education. The more educated a person is, the more likely they are to vote. In summary, the debate between Candace and Priscilla presents starkly different views on patriarchy, gender power, and political literacy, and the fact-checking reveals that Candace leans on anecdotal and oversimplified interpretations of gender roles, occasionally using faulty logic. Princella offers more data-supported arguments, but sometimes misuses global statistics in U.S.-specific debates and overstates certain historical claims. When assessing U.S. voter behavior and educational trends, there is no major gender gap in literacy, and women slightly outperform men in reading. Okay? So there you go. Women. Not black men, not the brothers, as Barack Obama called us. We ain't the reason that Kamala Harris lost. White women. It was white women. Y'all feminist sisters in arms. But when we look at the facts, they tell a totally different story. All right, so I've been on for about an hour and a half, and definitely check out the podcast. Join us on our Facebook page, Black Talk Radio Network. Join, I keep saying join, but check out blacktalkradionetwork.com. You'll see podcasts like Our Voices. You'll see Time for Awakening on there. You'll see three brothers talking smack, three sisters, or three, I think it's three sisters talking smack, although they ain't put out a podcast in a while. But definitely check out some of the media over there, the podcast and the digital radio stations. And if you go to Black Talk Media Project on Facebook, again, that URL is facebook.com/Black Talk Media Project. It will take you to our page, and you could go to the top of the page and you'll see a pinned featured post where you can make a direct donation, which you can also do at blacktalkradionetwork.com to go and support a black-owned, black-controlled, nonprofit new media organization that exists to elevate marginalized voices and to help educate the general public at large. That's it. Peace and blessings to all.